Seems like Chicago cannot find a good option for the migrant crisis. Guys, the city really isn't that incredibly big. I mean, compared to some of the international cities out there, Chicago is actually fairly small with a population of 2.1 million people, all just crammed into this tiny little space, with the south side having food deserts and also the loop area having a massive exodus of companies. Chicago could never catch a break in the past decade. And it's getting worse right now because they basically brought in like 50,000 people to a city of just 2.1 million, and they didn't even prepare anything. So now you got more than 13,000 people under pressure to find homes and work before they're mass evicted from city operated shelters. Guys, Chicago, yes, their job market is okay compared to some cities in America, but okay doesn't cut it, okay? 13,000 people need jobs in Chicago so they can actually pay rent. Is that even happening? Probably not. In fact, if you go to Chicago right now, it's kind of hard to find a job. Big corporations are pulling out. Small businesses are pulling out because of mass amounts of robberies. Chicago has some of the highest crime rates in the world, which discourages many small businesses to open up here. And that kind of sucks for the migrants because they need work. And a lot of times, small businesses and mid-sized businesses are usually the ones that give out much of like the entry jobs. Okay, I don't really think Boeing or Microsoft are going to be handing out entry jobs. They're usually very high-end jobs. So yeah, the migrants are kind of screwed right now. Chicago basically didn't plan anything. They have a bunch of shelters, sure, but it's not enough for everyone. 13,000 people are about to be sleeping on the streets, and Chicago basically just pulled themselves a San Francisco. Look at this. Chicago needs to take care of its migrants and stop putting the migrant crisis over residents. Residents all over the state need support. This man right here is actually pretty mad about this and pretty much says that basically all folks across the city need help. I mean, yeah, Chicago is one of the cities who has one of the most food deserts. It also has some of the highest crime I've ever seen. There's also hundreds of carjackings every single month. Chicago PD is stretched super thin. They can't even stop the exodus of companies. It's getting really, really bad. And Chicago is actually going broke. In fact, almost 40% of all their offices are vacant. Office transactions are at an all-time low. Chicago basically screwed themselves. And now they're adding the migrant crisis. I think they're done, right? And he pretty much says that a lot of the politicians are basically doing it for themselves. And a lot of people do agree with this man. They really do feel like Chicago basically turned their backs to many of Chicago residences. Now, if you guys go to Chicago, there's actually a lot of homeless people. And the homeless people even said that they're voting for Trump. They're kind of done with the Democratic Party. You even have Chicago where 97% of the neighborhoods voted for Biden. And now they said they're not voting for Democrats ever again. And check this out, right? 2 Chicago area companies received large city contracts to provide meals to migrants. And they got a bunch of money, like $45 million and $57 million. And people are saying that Chicago Mayor Brandon Johnson gives out over $100 million to 2 companies to feed migrants. They're essentially charging the city $17 per person per day and will each make $150,000 plus a day. And yeah, this is coming out from taxpayers' pockets. What the guy is saying is many of the meals are very sloppy, they're not high quality, and a lot of the money will be pocketed by administration fees with quotation marks. And this is what's happening here. We're seeing a lot of this. And I think everyone is kind of done with this situation. I mean, Chicago is literally going broke. They're even trying to go to Washington, D.C. to ask for more money. Chicago is one of the cities that have a lot of wealth. Guys, this is where the stock market is, right? This is where all the stock orders get directed to. Chicago. They make bank. They have all the big corporations. And now everyone seems to be leaving. Not to mention this thing right here. It's just a mess, right? In Chicago, I have no clue when the world's going on, and many people are no longer visiting the city anymore. Tourism is also slowly decreasing as well, and even full-on hard Chicago Democrats are soon the mayor for housing migrants. So just saying that there's actually a massive homeless population in Chicago, but nobody seems to give a care in the world. Of course, you also have armed robberies. Nothing ever seems to get done. Police are also heavily short-staffed. Walgreens stores, convenience stores are all robbed, which leads to food deserts. And Chicago has to talk about how they will be opening city-owned grocery stores in South Chicago to pretty much help out the food deserts and give some of the residents in that area some better, healthy choices. To this day, it's been months. It's not even going to cost a lot. And I think if they just direct just a small portion of the money they're putting in the migrant crisis to maybe preventing food deserts, I think it's fully doable. But it's already been like half a year, virtually no progress. It's just still talking about it. It's just a single grocery store. They can't even open that. So let's see what happens here. Hopefully Chicago recovers. Chicago is actually on a brink of collapse right now. They just can't take it anymore.